Welcome back, everyone, to Nopes and Opes. Here we are. I'm joined by my lovely co-host Highland.
Yep.
And good old Lancelot.
Yeah.
He's
front and center.
Front and center. Wants to share the limelight. We're back again in Peoria, Illinois.
Yeah.
And what?
Peoria, Illinois 2.0.
Yeah.
Like, this is definitely the new and improved.
Yes,
Peoria.
absolutely. Still
Like this-
hanging out underneath my bunk bed from childhood. But, looks a lot more professional now.
Yeah. We hope.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely the goal.
Well, even if it doesn't look professional to you, I like it. So
I freaking love it. I mean, I think this has become, we went from just being in Peoria to now we're in professional Peoria.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
a studio space.
Yeah.
I mean, it also helps that there is a 5-foot wide giant key light behind the camera. So it really makes me feel like we're doing something. And with the, the accent lights off to the side, illuminating the background.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. And I still cannot get past the idea that light is one day somehow going to inch its way forward and just maybe eat off the front of my face or something like that. It's so large.
Yeah, it's pretty freaking massive.
I've
I kind of overdid it. I thought, the bigger the better. Like
Yeah.
I should get the biggest one possible, which I did. And I'm not lying; it is 5 feet wide. Like, that is the measurement. It kind of looks like the sun or the moon is behind the camera.
Yeah.
And,
It's really, really big.
But it was an overcorrection from the last episodes where it was very dimly lit. So yeah, that's why we got this big old light to illuminate our beautiful faces and Lance's beautiful face. I think that's the real reason.
I did turn on one, as I mentioned, I have been listening, or I watched on YouTube.
Yeah.
Which is surprising that I said that out loud because, it's not so surprising because I don't want to log into Spotify. So that's the reason. Otherwise, I would have just listened.
Yeah.
But so it's easier. I can just log in as a guest.
I'll
to
take the win
YouTube.
however way I can.
But I will just say this because now that we're past it, now that it's been released, whatever, I did turn on that first episode from my apartment and it was freaking dark.
Yeah.
And
it's dark.
my heart just sank and I was like, ooh, this is not.
Yeah, maybe
the-
watch or listen to those episodes on Spotify. I mean,
Yeah.
they're on YouTube, but if you really want to get the full experience, just listen to it. It's honestly, close your eyes, and it's pretty much the same, the same episode.
It was shockingly dark. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, that just makes this so much better.
Yeah.
Right. And so much more appreciated.
Well, in theme with this episode, we're going to be talking about kind of conversations and how people interact with each other. It's kind of a tradition. Okay, Lance. All right, I'm trying to help you out, but you're being difficult. There's a tradition kind of with my father anytime he listens to the podcast where he will call me while he's at work
Yeah.
and kind of just give me a review or make a few points in, kind of what I could have done better or just kind of ask some questions, yada, yada, yada. And so recently he listened to an episode that we talk about, Enjoy Being Lost is the title. And we watched this clip of a poem spoken by David White. And it's not his poem, but in the episode I said it was his poem. My father called me and corrected me, told me it wasn't actually his poem. So, kudos to Dad for that. But he came to me and he gave me this paper the next day with some bullet points. And I wanted to talk about these bullet points and kind of go through them. And I asked my dad, kind of what the purpose of these points were, like what made you think of them or what kind of brought this on. And it's more about, how people interact in conversations and kind of different ways to do it. And he specifically was thinking of people of younger generations and like kids basically and how they interact.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what this is going to be about, kind of how we communicate with each other and things we might do in conversation and kind of go from there.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the first point is just the idea of interrupting. This makes it seem like you don't care what the other person has to say. Your point is more important.
Yeah, I mean, um, I I mean, unfortunately for us, this is the second time that we've recorded this,
Yes.
so my reactions won't be as initial, like they won't be my first kind of reactions to these things because I and we got 90% through
Yeah.
the episode and we had one left and the camera
The main camera cut out.
lost
The
battery.
Rowan cam was still alive and well, but we
Yeah.
felt like, it would be kind of a disservice. So
Yeah.
we're going through it again.
Yeah, we just want to go through it again. But I just I in doing this yesterday, I just remember how genuinely not shocked necessarily, but just kind of amazed at how simple these are, but also how insightful and how really valuable they are in thinking about and actually discussing. And I think hopefully in doing it yesterday and doing it a second time, I can even add a little bit of the things that I wanted to say that I didn't get to say the first time. But the idea of interrupting, like this first one, always brings me back to Highland. You interrupt people all the time. Like you need to be a little bit more conscientious and more aware of well, how many times you actually do kind of step on people's flow. And even in this podcast, like all the time, I'm kind of like I just step in and like you're flowing, you're saying things, and then I'm like, oh yeah, let me just say this one thing. I'm like, oh Highland, like what the heck? But yeah, the idea of interrupting, I think, is an ultimate sign of one, just not paying attention to what other people are saying, and then two, like really disrespectful,
Yeah.
right? Like not letting someone complete their full thought and just being like, oh, okay. And just disregarding that in a way and just being like, okay, time for me to talk. Like I don't think you have any value. It's ultimately so disrespectful. So yeah, I think that's a really, really important point and one that I need to personally
Yeah.
pay attention to.
And this is something that when we were kids growing up, we had this problem a lot where we would just like start to tell stories or start to say something, and then one of us would interrupt. Like me and my brothers, we would interrupt each other all the time. And so our dad kind of like made it a rule, like, when others are talking, like be respectful,
Yeah.
don't talk over them. And so it's a tough one because I've been around people that are really like think that they are the man or that they are the voice to be heard, and they'll interrupt you, and it's honestly, it just kinda, like, sucks the air out of your sails. You're just kinda like, "Oh, I'm alright, I don't wanna talk to you, like, this is bad." And then I've never felt that way with you. Usually, when you interrupt, I'm, like, kinda done making my point. And if you do interrupt and it's something I wanted to get back to, I got no problem being like, "So back to what I was saying." So, yeah, no, it's not a huge problem for this podcast, but it's definitely something that occurs a lot in conversations, and it's definitely something that I mean, everyone I guess can work on. But I mean, I don't know if I really interrupt a lot. I don't think I necessarily interrupt you, but I'm just trying to think of in my daily life if I'm a person that will kind of stop people. I'm a kind of a listener. I like to
Yeah.
listen and not necessarily jump in too much.
Well, I think too, like this just kind of I think this is gonna be interesting redoing this for a second time because I think like you have your original thoughts from yesterday's
Hmm.
version, but then also you can add on to what you were thinking before. And I think one of the things that I said yesterday when we recorded this the first time is also when you interrupt, you are like one of the main reasons that you interrupt is because you think your point is more valuable
Important.
and
Yeah.
more immediate, more important than what's being stated by someone else. And oftentimes it's a way of it's basic. I think a lot of these are based on insecurities, and oftentimes when people that interrupt a lot feel that they need to somehow express how knowledgeable or how much information they have about this
Yeah.
certain topic or whatever. And I think that's one of the difficulties in conversations, like with a lot of these, is when you kind of employ some of the things that we're going to talk about here, it's basically comes from a sense of insecurity where you feel like, oh, this person doesn't think I'm smart enough or have enough knowledge, and so I'm going to just spew like
Yeah.
point after point after point, no matter when, how, where, whatever, disregard for anybody else. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to say everything I know about this topic, and it's like, okay, well, you can do that, but it
Yeah.
doesn't make you sound any smarter.
Yeah. So the next bullet point on, and there's like I think 7 bullet points that my dad wrote down. So we're gonna go through all of them. The next one is called story topping. This can shift the conversation from connection to competition.
Oh man, I I feel I feel as if this happens to me a lot, but I also feel like I am capable of doing this. And I try really, really hard not to do this because I feel I feel like I have a lot of cool stories to share.
Yeah.
And
Same.
sometimes people feel like I'm sharing them and like, oh, this guy's just trying to show off or
Yeah.
whatever. And genuine I hope that I am not that way, but like I hope that I just share stories because I think that they're relevant or they would add to the conversation in some way. But a lot of times people do think like, oh, this guy's just showing off
Yeah.
and whatever, dot dot dot, and it does become something of a competition.
Yeah.
And I am more than capable of getting caught up in that
Oh yeah.
competition. I think as I've gotten older and hopefully a little bit more mature and just a little bit sound in my own kind of sense of self and security and sense of well-being for me as an individual, I feel less inclined to get involved in that.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is a very real deal for sure.
It's something that I've done where I will, and it's not necessarily story topping. Like I'm trying to uh, beat someone's story. I've done that in the past. Don't get me wrong. Like my whole family, like when we sit down at the dinner table, we are like, okay, who's got a funny story? Like, what can we say? Like Emmett will share a story. I'll share a story. And in those situations, it's usually not like, hey, I want my story to be better than yours. It's just like we're trying to have a good time, have a good laugh and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I have found myself not necessarily story topping, but doing something where I will share a story to try and invoke some kind of reaction.
Yeah.
And then I can tell that it's like, cool story. And then they kind of like we move on to the next topic, or it's just like it has nothing to do with like I thought it would have some kind of relevancy or it might make them laugh. Like if a certain situation arose, I might be like, oh yeah, like I once, did this and this happened. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, well, I should have shut up.
Yeah.
Like that happens to me. Not too often, but like I've been one to, share stories when it's like, that wasn't necessarily
It just falls
needed.
totally flat.
And it's like, hey man, that's, part of life. You're not always gonna be, zinging them all the time.
Yeah.
So, but it's a fun concept. The next one is one of my favorite ones. And we, talked about it yesterday, but it's just like a very simple phrase, but it's called bright siding. And it's
Oh,
always encouraging others to be positive, can feel invalidating.
yeah. Absolutely. This is the one that strikes me the most and kind of the deepest and the one that I have the most like visceral reaction to because I think a lot of and I mean you and I have had discussions about therapy and how I feel about therapy and things
Yeah.
like that and how I kind of rebel against being labeled as a therapist or anything like that. But I think and I don't know how to exactly say this because I don't um I just I think a lot of therapy or approaches maybe are about like let's just focus on the bright side of things and realize that things will change and things will always get better and I really kind of rebel against that because I think it's really really important to like get down in the dirt and really get to the essence of things and feel all of the emotions, feel the negatives, the positives, the rage, the fury, the anger, the sadness, the hopelessness. I think all of those things are super valuable in being able to feel the joy, the sense of abundance, gratitude, all of these things as well. And I just yeah, I really like for me that one really, really kind of gets me fired up because I want myself and I want everyone that I deal with to welcome all that life has to offer,
Yeah.
right? And life has everything to offer. It has sadness, it has despair, it has hopelessness, it has all of these things that just freaking crush you. And then it has all of the things that bring you up. And to me, that's what it means to live,
Yeah.
to experience, to be a fully functioning human being. For me, I've gotten to the point where I feel comfortable enough where if there's days where I can't get out of bed, like often I'll get through my week, I'll get through my work week, and I'll do a really good job and I'll expend a lot of energy. And Saturday morning will come and I'm spent. Like
Yeah.
I'm done. It's just like I'm not getting out of bed today. I'm not going outside today. And when I was younger, I would think, "What's wrong with me? Like why? Like what? Like am I depressed? Do I
Hmm.
need medication? This, that, whatever." I never thought I needed medication, but I just thought like, what? What's going on? Like why can't I just be like everybody else?
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm just like, no, man, this is what your body needs. This is what like you need a break. Like be gracious with yourself, allow it to happen,
Yeah.
and then move on.
I have the same thing. So my work week is usually from Tuesday through Saturday, bartending and whatnot. Sunday and Monday we're not open. And so by Sunday, it's kind of like, and like as a bartender, you're supposed to be pretty jovial and like greet people and it's customer service. So there is kind of a pressure to be kind of like very present and very kind of like everything's great, like we're having a great time,
Yeah.
which I do. Like I'm a pretty jovial guy, but by Sunday I'm so kind of depleted, and like stay up late until like 1 a.m. and don't. I come home wired, so I can't really fall asleep
Yeah.
quickly. So
Yeah.
like sleep's all messed up and whatnot. But so Sundays are like always my kind of rest days. And the thing that I was always worried about is that I would fall back into the patterns I had when I was at like my lowest,
Mm.
where I just kind of like sit around. I watch YouTube for a while. I might, not really go outside. I'm not really eating that well, or I might eat like, I'll have like a soda. I might have like a cookie, and I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm falling into the old habits. And it's like, no, it's just a day. Like I'm just having for myself. And then Monday's always a very productive day.
Yeah.
Like the podcast comes out, I'm working out and everything. So, it's just one of those things of like being cognizant of how, like you're gonna have days where you're not gonna feel the most positive, and if you're around people that are like, "You always gotta be positive. It's sunshine and rainbows here." It's like, no, not every day is that way. Some days are gonna be bleak and sad, and that's okay.
Well, I had a friend, one of my best friends. We were both friends with a dude, and he he drove me crazy, and I think I probably drove him crazy too. But he would just always like you'd ask him, and everything's great, like that's the answer all the time.
Mm,
Everything's good, man. Like really great. Like family's good, friends are good, life's good, everything's good. Like things are great, man. And I just couldn't stand that dude, man. And my best friend was friends with him, and it got to the point where like we just couldn't hang out with each other. And for a while there, like my best friend chose him, and like I was devastated. I'm like, what the heck? Like, how is that even possible? But it was high school, whatever. But for me, that drives me crazy, right? Like like I mean, I guess I ask this question of people all the time, but like I'll say, how's it going? And people all the time, the typical answer is, oh, I'm good, I'm fine,
yeah,
whatever. And all the time, like I'll look at them and I'll be like, nah, like things are not okay, and I'll just stop and like ask them, nah, man, what's the real answer? Like, what's really going on? And a lot of times people will be so receptive to that second question. They'll be like, "What? You really want to know like what's going on?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course. Like I can look at you and I can tell things are not okay." And they will welcome the chance to actually talk. Like say, "Yeah, actually things are really bad at my house right now. My kids are doing this, my husband's doing this, whatever
right.
work is da da da." And like just that chance to have the ability to kind of express the reality of their
Hmm.
life as opposed to covering it up is welcome and really quite therapeutic. And then the last thing that I want to say is the other day I was just talking to my niece and she was just telling me how somebody was saying that she should seek out therapy because she's dealing with anxiety and a bunch of things going on and she's just young and
Yeah.
she shouldn't have all these things. And I just I just these conversations, especially for young people, there's this idea that feeling anxious or feeling depressed or feeling sad or feeling low on energy is something that we shouldn't feel, right? Like, oh, there's something wrong with me.
Ah,
Anxiety is a very useful attribute, right?
yeah.
It's been developed over thousands and thousands of years in order to serve us in some way. Like we need to feel anxiety to prepare us, to get us ready for fight, flight, or freeze, to like let us know, like, hey, this situation is uncomfortable to us. We're going to need to react in some way. Like there are benefits to feeling the things that we feel, and they're like it may not be the exact things that we want at certain times, but we tend to pathologize these things and create these negative connotations when in reality there's nothing wrong with feeling anxious, right? It's a basic human reaction to certain situations. It only becomes a negative aspect when we can't deal with it in a positive manner, but every single one of us are going to feel anxious. And we feel anxious for a reason. And it's our systems letting us know like, hey, something needs to happen here in order to move forward in a more positive way. And yet, like throughout American society for sure, but throughout the Western world and I think even into kind of the world as a whole, we're beginning to look at these things and we're saying, oh, that's negative. Like I should always be up. I should always have energy. Life should always be good. I should always be happy. I'm sorry, but F that, man. Like there's benefits to like laying in bed all day long and maybe crying and maybe just I don't know, watching sad movies, eating a bowl of ice
Yeah.
cream. I
I
don't know,
mean,
whatever it is.
if you suppress the emotions, they're always going to be there, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even the people that are like, "Oh, everything's fine and dandy," like one day they might just snap and be
Yeah.
like, "Everything's not fine and dandy, this, that," and
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
have a complete breakdown. And so I think, in line with this bright siding and whatnot, like don't always approach people in conversations of being like, no, you should be super positive. Like next is being all knowing, explaining
Oh,
information without being asked for your expertise, and without being asked is underlined.
yeah, I think yesterday we talked about this is
Basically mansplaining
yeah,
to a certain extent.
yeah,
And
as
how
far
I
as as far as we understand it.
Yeah, as far as we understand it, us men. And the two ways that I've kind of seen mansplaining been done before is like one way would be someone explains something and then some other guy will like basically re-explain the exact same thing that someone else had explained and basically like take credit for it. And they're like, you're just repeating what, Carol said or whoever it may be, right? And then another way is
I feel like
just,
that happens in business all the time.
oh, I'm sure it does.
Like
It's
women
like,
come up with these amazing
yeah,
ideas and then the man gets
yeah,
credit.
they'll be like, actually, I was thinking about it. We should reinvest. And it's like, Brittany just said that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
thanks,
mean,
Derek.
it's not funny, but I feel like there's so many movies and
Oh, yeah.
just yeah, okay.
So that's one way of it. And then I think another way of mansplaining is something along the lines of, someone is doing something and someone just starts to explain to them without them even asking, like, why it is that you do the certain thing. Or like, it's just kind of like, no, no, no. Let me explain it to you. You can't simply understand. I know what I'm talking about. And you're like, okay, dude. All right.
Well, I think like I don't know if this is correct or not, but I feel like I see a lot of videos in the weight room. Actually, in the gyms,
Mhm.
right, where dudes come up and they're like, "Oh no, you should lift this way and this way and this way."
Oh my God.
And I
That's the
don't
absolute worst
I
thing
don't
in the
know if
world.
that's an example of mansplaining or
Oh,
not,
it
but
could be like like for instance, if some lady is doing like a specific like bicep workout or a squat or whatever she's doing, and
yeah,
some guy walks up and is like, "Actually, no, you should probably do it this way. Like your form's bad. You should do it this way."
yeah.
It's definitely a way of mansplaining, which is
Uh,
like, "Hey, man, She's just minding her own business. Like,
Yeah.
why are you being an asshole?
She didn't ask. She didn't yeah, she did not want anything from you. Actually, she wanted you to stay
Yeah,
far,
that's
far
the
away.
I mean, that's why my Fazha, underlines without being asked. It's explaining something without being asked. Now, if someone asks you something like, "Hey, Hylan, why does this work this way?" and you explain it, it's not mansplaining. Someone asks you for your opinion.
It's explaining.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that and
No,
that
I
I
think
think that happens a lot in
oh,
conversations, you know?
I I wonder I think it would be really interesting to kind of video myself, which is never gonna happen, but for 24 hours. No.
Oh, I was like,
No, no, no. I mean,
"Okay,
yeah. I realize
sure."
we're videoing myself right now, but just video
I've been
myself
lying to Hyland the entire time. The cameras have never been turned on.
for 24 hours and just because like I have my perception of the type of person that I am,
Right.
and I just think it would be shocking. I'm thinking about this and being like, oh, those poor suckers that do all these
No.
things, like pff, like so bad. But I can guarantee you that if I video myself for 24 hours, I'd be like, ooh, I'm guilty of that one, that
Yeah.
one, that one, all of them.
Yeah. It's a tough one because I don't know what it is, but, like, I think this also happens in certain situations where, like, if someone approaches you with a problem and instead of you kind of like, actually, no, that's the next one. Never mind that point. I'm gonna get ahead of myself. But no, I've done it with certain things that I'm, like, very, like, passionate about, right? So, like, if someone starts talking about lacrosse,
Oh yeah.
I'll be like, "Hey, like, I actually know a good amount about this." Or, like, there's this kind of social media phenomenon or meme. You've heard of Lord of the Rings, right?
Yes.
Okay, so in the movie Lord of the Rings, there's a lot of like hidden knowledge and behind the scene moments that happen. And there's this whole, kind of like social media phenomenon because there's a specific scene where the character Aragorn kicks a helmet and he like screams after it. And it's like this very kind of like powerful scene. And the joke behind this scene is that everyone always will say like, "Did you know that Viggo Mortensen actually broke his toe when he kicked that helmet, and that's why he screamed?"
I knew that.
Exactly, right? People in like it's joked about and like whatever, like they had been reshooting or not reshooting, they were re-releasing the movies in movie theaters, and there was this video of some guy sitting in the movie theater with a movie. It was packed and then that scene happened, and some guy in the back went, "Do you know?" And like the whole crowd laughed because everyone knows it, right? But
Oh
that's just a fun example of like nobody asked for you to explain that this thing happens, and you
yeah.
just like out of the blue are like, "By the way, this is why that happened." And it's like, okay, dude, great.
Yeah.
So
Nobody wants to hear you talk.
yeah. So to the next point, which I kind of was getting to already, it's called advising. Sometimes people just want empathy and to be heard and to be seen.
This is something that I think I do really, really well. I
Hmm,
feel like this is a strength of mine. And I think it's a really one of the reasons why I might be a little bit successful in what I do. Um, because from the very beginning, anytime you meet me, whether it's through the schools or whatever, I hope that I make it very, very clear that I'm not the one that's going to solve your problems, right? You're going to be the one that is going to need to step up and take care of business.
mhm.
I'm going to support the heck out of you, and I'm going to be on your side. I'm going to do everything I can to help you get where you want to get. But in the end, it's your responsibility. And so yeah, I think I do a good job of just listening to what you have to say, being there for you. I think like the two things that I say to kids when they walk in my office and we're just talking or whatever, or even if they're really upset or whatever, there's two things I say. I really every day I walk into this work environment, there's only two things that I can really do. I can't solve your problems. I can't make anything go away. I can't give you more money. I can't give you more food. I can't make your parents love each other, whatever it is.
Right.
The only two things that I can really offer you is I will be here 100%. When I show up and you come into my office, I will be present for you as much as is possible at that moment. And then two, I care about you, right? I I will do everything I can to help you as much as is possible. But that's it, and I think that's the essence of that. And I
Yeah.
think I do that really, really well.
And I this is definitely something that I have struggled with in the past because like a lot of guys, so for instance, in terms of like relationships, some the lady might come to you and be like, "Oh, I have this problem at work between me and this person or
Yeah,
whatever the problem may be."
yeah, yeah,
And the default for most men is like, "Well, why don't you do this?" And they're just trying to solve the problem. And you start to learn that it's like, "Hey man, I don't actually need the fucking answer. I just want you to hear me out
I
and
just
just
want you to
feel
give
for
me
me."
a hug.
Right? Yeah, like I just need your ear. And that's something that I really started to realize last year or 2023 I should say when like I went through all my shit and I would talk to people about it and they're like, "Hey man, you just got to pick yourself up." And I'm like, "I know that. I
Yeah,
know that I need to do that. But right now, I'm not feeling that. All right? I'm feeling pretty down. I just like you to just hear me out, right?"
yeah,
And I think it's healthy for people to actually just listen and hear people out. I think it can get to an unhealthy point, everything in moderation.
yeah,
Like if
yeah.
every time you talk to this person, they're just kind of complaining about this one thing and it's like, "Hey buddy, like let it go. Like it's over, move on."
Well, I think actually I'm sitting here laughing to myself because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking my own thoughts. And I might think that I'm really, really good at this because I have not had an intimate partner
Mm,
in my life and I haven't really been tested,
yeah.
right? Because I feel like when you have an intimate relationship,
Oh yeah.
right? And then that dynamics between men and women, like I don't know for other relationships, like I don't know that
Yeah.
too
No.
well, right?
No.
Um, yeah, even though there are rumors about Ron and I, we're not
Yeah.
actually
We
as
are not a
intimate
couple.
as people think.
Okay.
But
It's not true.
uh, you know, um, but no, I think yeah, I think it's interesting because I th- I mean, there's so many books and everything. Men are from
Mars.
Mars and women are
Women are
from
from
Venus,
Venus or whatever.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like all of these different books, YouTube, like whole channels developed
Oh yeah. On
specifically on the differences
relationships.
between men and women.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think I may feel I'm really, really good at this because I have not had for 15 years or whatever it's been. I've never really had a woman coming to me. I might be one of those like, hey, I got the solution. Here you go. So
Well,
we'll see.
at least with me, you don't do that. I mean, me and Hilo have conversations outside of the podcast where I'll be talking about something going on in my life or something that I'm thinking about, and he will be like, "Well, I'm listening, and I could say something, but I'm just gonna, like you know what you need to do," and I'm like, "Huh, okay." So I think you do a very good job of it for me, like, I'd like to think I'm that way. I haven't been in a relationship in a hot minute here, so, like, I'm excited for the next relationship I get in as, like, a test to be like, "Okay, Rowan, like, you talk a lot about the stuff on the podcast, you better put it into practice.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't be
What's
that guy."
what's the actual reality?
Yeah. So, but yeah, those are all the points that my dad had to make about, conversations, and I just think this is a test to Fazha's, hidden knowledge that most people don't, get to see at first glance.
Well, I mentioned this last time when we recorded this, but I think I I I hope to God, like we talk about having people on the podcast, and I hope that, I mean, that's a huge goal for 2025. Like I would love people to
Yeah.
come on and just share their thoughts, like even challenge us. I think one of the biggest benefits to me in doing this is one, Rowan has done an excellent job in challenging some of my thoughts in the book that I propose. And like a couple times I've had to straight up and like, ooh, I was wrong. Like
Yeah.
I rescind that. Like that was not correct thinking on my part. But like I hope to God your dad can come on the podcast and just like sit here between us and just like expound his infinite knowledge. But when you see Mr. Kurt Hanold, like, I'm sorry to say this, buddy. Like, if you're listening to this, when I first saw you, I did not just see massive amounts of intelligence, right? Like, I see a big, burly,
Yeah.
strong, intimidating, somewhat scary dude, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, this is an intimidating figure here.
Yeah.
But then you get to know him and you have some conversations with him, and you're like, oh my God, this dude is a philosopher in a freaking, 250 whatever pound linebacker body. I mean, like, this dude's a strong dude, but his brain is just as agile, just as
Mhm.
capable as his body is. And so, yeah, I hope one day, like, we get the chance just to sit down and then other people get to see the physical and then compare it to what this guy writes and says and the amount of knowledge that he has offered us, like, just in this specific context, right? Just
Yeah.
within the podcast.
Well, I
I
mean,
mean, he's
even when, when you come and stay, we'll sit in the fishbowl and, he'll just share thoughts of what's going on in your head and his head, and then we'll kinda come up here and be like, "Well, dad said something that was pretty, impactful, and we're gonna talk about it."
yeah,
And, like, he has a big influence, and it's just kind of like a test, like, it just makes me understand why he's so much more quiet. Like, my dad is not the type of person that's always super outspoken. He does a
mm,
lot of, like, internal reflecting
mhm,
because I think he's trying to really figure out what his thought process is based on it, and then he'll come to the table and kind of, like, really be able to explain it. Like, for instance, like, when I was little, if I ever got in trouble, I was always looking forward to the next day because then, like, in the moment, what's happening is my dad's angry and it might be kinda, like, met with anger or rage, and then I get yelled at or whatever, and then I'm kinda like, "Yeah, that sucked." But then the next day, he'll kind of, like, explain, like, "Hey, I'm sorry, but, like, you can't do this because of these, things." And then it's, like, a much more articulated and understanding presence
yeah,
because he actually had time to think about it.
hmm, yeah. No, yeah, I just, I guess, kind of like an appreciation. Yeah, like, Kurt has offered us some pretty significant insights and talking points, and I think 3 episodes he's basically provided, right?
Yeah, yeah. This
Out of
is
the
Fazha part 3.
yeah, for sure, and, so far, I think the greatest contributor
Oh,
to
yeah. I
to
mean, in terms of, like, just really impactful points and whatnot,
yeah.
like, we've had a lot of people that have contributed just in terms of, like, positivity,
Oh,
but,
yeah, yeah.
you know, my dad always likes to be like, "What are you guys saying? Like, what is this? What are you talking about?" But
Yeah.
it's fun.
Just to be clear, it's not always so insightful.
Yeah,
There's some
there's some
what can you say?
critiquing.
Constructive criticism?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one way to put it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but, yeah, so I think that's it for this episode. If you have anything that you'd like to add to the end here, but, we'll wrap it up.
No, I think, just okay, so I'm just gonna say, like, oh man, I am so capable of being hypocritical. I'm gonna be hypocritical here for a moment.
'Kay.
I'm gonna try and tell people how to live their lives. So
Hmm,
this should go really well.
yeah.
I just in the spirit of 2025 and the goals that Rowan and I have kind of set for ourselves for the podcast, for our individual kind of wishes for this coming year. If you made it this far in the podcast and you actually listened to the things that were brought up and you kind of were shaking your head like, ooh, okay, I might be capable of that one, like interrupting or advising or whatever it is. And you kind of did a little bit of soul searching and you're like, oh, let's just be aware of how we are communicating with each other because I think discourse in this country, especially, has gotten to a point where it is so almost incapable in certain situations, and we are so quick to dismiss each other and not even willing to listen,
Right.
not even willing to really honestly discuss. just do a little soul searching and realize all of us are capable of doing these things, and let's try to reach out. Let's try to communicate. Let's try to listen. Let's actually try to create connections between us, right? Even if we're on opposite ends, even if we disagree, whatever, like like, we're all in this together. Well, whatever side of the political spectrum we're on, whatever your beliefs are about this, that, whatever, in the end, we're all in this life together, and we all have to communicate. We all have to work together in some ways. And without communication, without actual, real understanding of each other, it's only going to get worse. And so, I hope I'm not telling people how to do things, but just asking in the nicest way possible.
Yeah.
Like think about how you communicate. Think about how you listen. Think about how you speak and how you kind of deal with others. And if some of these happen, and these are some of the things that maybe you tend to do on a regular basis, maybe try to do them less.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, gang, if you'd ever like to share any of your stories or any of your insights, you can reach out to us at NopeOpePod at gmail.com. Fazha, feel free to give me a call when you listen to this one. Let me know how you felt about it. And yeah, we appreciate all the love and support. The book is available in the podcast description alongside of Highland's website, which has his blog attached to it. And yeah, that's it for this episode. We'll see you guys in the next one.